the Ozone Park neighborhood in Queens.
Jimmy Burke was notorious in law enforcement circles as being an absolute reckless individual.
Because of his Irish heritage, Jimmy could not be a made member of the mob, meaning he couldn't reach its highest levels. But he was still very active.
He was a tough guy's tough guy, and he was an earner. Jimmy Burke brought in money, and that brought the kind of respect from captains and bosses that even legitimate Italian heritage couldn't.
Burke headed a gang, or crew as the mob called it, that was involved in bookmaking, cigarette smuggling, loan sharking, and their most profitable venture, hijacking merchandise from JFK International Airport.
In the case of Kennedy Airport, there were two dominant families there. At that time, there were the Gambino family and John Gotti's crew, and the Lucchese crime family and Jimmy Burke's crew, which kind of split the airport with John Gotti.
Truck hijacking was rampant at Kennedy Airport. You know, we used to grab a few loads every week, just about. I mean, it was like taking candy from a baby.
It was almost as if the airport was the mafia's ATM. You know, if you needed easy cash, you would go hijack a couple of trucks at the airport, and it would be a load of TVs or a load of shrimp. You know, it didn't matter. They knew how to move merchandise on the street. Kennedy Airport was an easy mark. You had the unions there. You had a lot of the workforce who were gamblers with gambling debts. So you had a steady stream of inside information. Kennedy Airport was easy pickings for the mob.
And if a hijacking occurred, police could place good bets on where it had been planned.
We believed at the time that most of the planning of any hijacking at Kennedy Airport came out of Robert's Lounge via Jimmy Burke. Robert's Lounge was a famous place not only in the underworld but also in law enforcement. Robert's Lounge was Jimmy Burke's headquarters for years and years.
Jimmy had owned the building. He owned that building, owned the building next door. We had a club downstairs in the basement. It was a clubhouse and also a drinking bar and restaurant. We used to gamble in the basement. We had a nice club fixed up there. We had bocce courts in the back. It was, you know, a place to hang out. It was very close to JFK Airport. There was a lot of airport employees hung out there. We got a lot of information from those people.
And that connection with airport employees paid off. In fact, it led to the biggest heist in U.S. history.
The robbery of the Lufthansa cargo building was the brainchild of a Lufthansa cargo worker by the name of Peter Grunwald. He was actually a clerical employee at the cargo building, and he realized that large sums of money and significant things of value were passing through the cargo building all the time. He then came up with the idea of how to execute the robbery, but he couldn't find anybody to do it. He went to a bowling buddy of his who also worked at the cargo building, a fellow by the name of Lou Werner.
Werner, deeply in debt from gambling losses, seized on this plan as a way to pay off his bookie.
What Werner did was he double-crossed Peter Grunwald, and he took his plan and he went to a runner for a bookmaker. He knew a person by the name of Frank Mena. Mena, in turn, put Werner together with Martin Krugman, who was a big-time bookmaker.
Krugman took the idea to Henry Hill, a close confidant of Jimmy the Gent.
He says he was going to get us all lucky, you know, for the holidays. I didn't put too much stock in what he had said. But as he continued to, you know, to tell me the story and produce more stuff, it started to shape up.
The plan was to rob Lufthansa Airlines of the cash in their high-value storage area. This money came into the airport from Europe, destined for U.S. banks. Usually the money was held at Lufthansa for a few hours. But occasionally, if it came in after the Brinks trucks had left, it was held until the next business day. Because it was cash from Americans overseas exchanging currency, it was in small bills with non-sequential serial numbers. Jimmy knew that with good inside information, this could be a great score. Two more members of Jimmy's crew, Robert "Frenchy" McMahon and Joe "Buddha" Manriquez, were sent to interview Werner. They were the only contacts from the crew that Werner would ever meet.
Frenchy and Joe Buddha met with Lou Werner and got a full set of plans. Then Jimmy and myself, we started to put together the rest of the crew.
The team that would perform the robbery would include Joe Buddha, Frenchy, Vincent Asaro, Jimmy's son Frankie, Angelo Seppi, and Jimmy's close friend Tommy DeSimone.
Tommy DeSimone was a complete psychopath. He would think nothing of killing anyone at the drop of a hat.
With Tommy and the rest of the gang set, the next step was clearing the robbery with the gang's capo, or captain, Paul Vario, a powerful member of the Lucchese family.
Before Jimmy Burke could carry out the Lufthansa robbery, he would have had to have had approval from Paul Vario. It would have been his responsibility to share a good portion of the proceeds with Vario.
Once approval was given, the final plan was set. Werner would watch Lufthansa's cargo logs for the next large shipment of cash from Europe.
They start mapping out a way to execute the robbery, thinking sometime around Christmas. What happens is their plans get expedited because on a Friday afternoon, there was a big shipment of money coming into the United States from Germany. And it is cash that was spent by probably American tourists and others in foreign countries and had been accumulated and was being shipped to Chase Manhattan Bank here in New York City.
Usually, incoming money was immediately transferred from the airport to the bank via Brinks trucks. On this day, however, a delay in procedures caused the cash to be held in Lufthansa's cargo area for the weekend.
Werner wasn't involved in the delay, but after the Brinks guards left, he discovered the shipment. Werner immediately left work and called up Joe Buda. Buda then got in touch with Burke, and the robbery was executed on an expedited basis on Sunday evening.
On December 11th, 1978, at 3 in the morning, masked robbers drove a large black van into the Lufthansa storage facility. After entering, they rounded up the 10 employees who were working the graveyard shift and herded them into the lunchroom. Next, the shift supervisor was escorted at gunpoint down to the high-value storage area.
You had to close the outer door, go into the second room, open that, go into the strong room, bring the money to the second room, close that door, go through a series of combinations on the safe, and then open the outer door. Then we had to load the truck, and made sure everybody stayed quiet in the interim of this.
After less than an hour, the gang pulled away from Lufthansa, loaded down with cash and jewels. The robbery went off without a hitch. The group escaped without detection. Burke had expected perhaps a few $1 million from the heist. What they came back with was over $5 million, plus foreign currency, unset gems, and jewelry.
I don't think anyone had any idea that it was going to be that much money.
This small band of wise guys had pulled off the perfect crime. Little did they know that for most of them, this would be the beginning of the end.
When the story broke, it started crossing the wires early in the morning, and it was billed as an armed robbery at the high-value cargo area at the Lufthansa cargo terminal at Kennedy Airport. And it could have been $500,000, and then it could have been $1 million. And then the figure started to climb, and we started seeing zeros that we hadn't seen in any armed robbery, that hadn't even been talked about since the Brinks job in Boston in the 50s. And pretty much before lunchtime, you knew that this was probably the biggest cash robbery in U.S. history.
Though never confirmed, the take was estimated to be between $5 and $6 million. And as the New York tabloids speculated about possible suspects, the police and FBI knew who was most likely to be behind the crime.
The FBI and the New York City Police Department had a pretty good idea who committed the robbery within 2 or 3 days. In fact, within a day of the robbery,